Botox is no longer just for the rich and famous who don't want to get wrinkles. It's gone mainstream, but so have the fakes. Counterfeit Botox is appearing from coast to coast now, and it can be dangerous. Juju Chang with more.
On Instagram, this med spa promised clients radiant skin, friendly service, even a machine that they said could give toned abs. And for many patients, the hope for a fountain of youth. But now prosecutors accuse this man, Joey Grant Luther, of injecting clients with counterfeit Botox, causing ailments from double vision to botulism. Henry Callender, who's not part of the criminal complaint, thought he was getting a smooth forehead for a fraction of the normal price.
It's like a very handsome, a lot of work done to him.
But instead, Henry says he ended up with what he says was an allergic reaction.
So I got injected and I had this kind of blow up. Looked like a giant bee sting, considering what I've heard from other people and reading some of these complaints. I definitely got off easy and I was lucky to have this reaction as the only reaction.
This week, the 54-year-old Luther was arrested and charged with wire fraud, smuggling, and crimes related to the handling of counterfeit drugs.
Do you have anything to say?
WABC filmed the esthetician walking into his building after he was released on bail. What once was stigmatized by some has gone mainstream. Almost 5 million Americans got Botox in 2023, according to the American Society of Plastic Surgeons.
I think I saw the biggest uptick in requests for Botox during the pandemic. When we were sitting at home during the pandemic, people were really glued to their cell phones, and they were really diving into social media.
And as more and more Americans are getting Botox, counterfeit Botox is popping up across the country.
My eyes were swollen and they were beet red, and it has not gone away to this day.
That's what happened to Lori Reed in California, who says this is what she looked like hours after getting injections of what she thought were real Botox and filler.
At first, I felt stupid. I felt like, how did I miss this? I felt like I looked like a monster.
Back in New York, prosecutors claim Luther didn't even have the required state medical license to give Botox in the first place.
It does vary state by state. In New York State, you have to be a doctor, so a physician, a surgeon, a dentist, a nurse practitioner, a nurse, or a physician assistant to legally practice Botox.
The complaint alleges one victim began experiencing double vision, heart palpitations, and slurring of speech after visiting 3 hospitals. The complaint also says she was diagnosed with botulism toxin, a potentially fatal illness. When this client allegedly texted Luther about her symptoms, the complaint claims that Luther falsely responded that he injected Botox from Allergan, the name brand.
If you're getting something that's actually not Botox, no one knows actually what is going into that mixture. If you have Botox that's counterfeit but it's too strong, you could get botulism, and that can cause all sorts of side effects in your body where the nerves are being paralyzed.
Text messages included in the complaint appears to show Luther responding to many of his clients' concerns. In one instance, a client texted Luther in part, "I'm nervous, re my vision. It's been getting worse each day." And he allegedly reassured her, "It's very temporary." Another client texted him, "I have also started having a hard time swallowing. I have headaches, and it's hard to lift my head when I'm laying down. Have you heard of this reaction?" To which he allegedly responded, "The neck fatigue and headaches sound more like a virus."
While Luther is being messaged by his clients and telling them about the various side effects they're having, the lazy eye, the double vision, the botulism, law enforcement shows that while he says to his clients, just put an ice pack on it or come back in a few days and we'll resolve it, he's also messaging his supplier and informing them that the product is tainted and list out some of those adverse reactions that his client's getting. He, in fact, tries to bargain with his supplier, suggesting that if they want to keep him as a client, they need to send better product and send it quickly.
Henry Callender, who hasn't spoken to law enforcement, was first drawn to Luther's office, he says, to treat acne on his forehead.
One of my friends went there. They recommend him. It's a good place to go. I hadn't heard any side effect stories, actually, until after the fact.
Despite the office having no med spa signage out front, Callender thought the office looked normal enough.
You walk into this office space, but it looks exactly like, a regular office. He had a room where he just administered Botox. He had Allergan, the Botox boxes for the legal for one of the main brands, and you're just assuming that this guy is, doing the correct thing.
Plus, Callender said the treatment was a cheaper option.
He was like slightly cheaper. It was probably like 20% cheaper than regular Botox. It was probably like $400 a treatment.
Botox is pretty expensive for a practice to take on. So if the price point seems too good to be true, probably is.
Henry went to Luther a number of times for more than a year and experienced no issues. But he says there was one treatment that stands out.
I went to his office and he administered Botox, kind of like the normal treatment. And I had this like really big like blow up on my forehead. It was like that for about 48, maybe 24 to 48 hours. And I remember messaging his office because he had like an office text line. And I said, hey, something's wrong. Like, what do I do about this? Do I need to go to the doctor and like get treated? And he said, no, just like put a cold compress on it.
An attorney representing Luther did not respond to requests for comment. But Henry says he's grateful he made it out without any severe health consequences. According to prosecutors, others were not so lucky. In December, the CDC issued a notice after more than a dozen people were hospitalized across the country.
The CDC said that 17 people across 9 states suffered similar reactions to tainted or counterfeit Botox from people who either had licenses and did not administer the right product or people who had no licenses at all.
Lori Reed says this is what she looked like before she went to see a woman she thought was a nurse for Botox and filler.
I'm a woman. I was getting older. I wanted Botox. I wanted to try what everybody was talking about.
She went to a woman named Susan Tancredo for a few years and said sometimes the Botox worked, sometimes it didn't seem to, but the price was right. Nothing would prepare her for what was to come.
My eyes were swollen and they were beet red, and it has not gone away to this day. So I text her and I said, what is wrong with my eyes? I just washed my face.
It has been several years and Lori is still dealing with the consequences, getting several procedures to try and reverse the damage.
For a while, I was very self-conscious. I wouldn't even date, so that sounds silly, but it did mess with me for a while because I felt like I looked in the mirror, and every time I looked in the mirror, I was just hideous. I felt like I looked like a monster.
According to a civil complaint filed by 16 different women, Tancredo was never licensed to inject Botox. She would purchase products from one doctor and counterfeit products from other countries. The suit has since been settled. She was ultimately found guilty in a criminal case and is serving probation after her 6-year prison sentence was suspended.
I wanted her to reap some sort of consequences for the damage that she had done. I expected her to do jail time. It turned out that she did not. So I was a little disappointed in that.
Back in New York, Luther's out on bail, but if this goes to trial and he's found guilty, he could face decades in prison.
After his indictment, Luther was released on a $100,000 bail with some requirements, wearing an ankle monitor as well as forfeiting his passport. And we'll see whether or not Luther decides to take a plea or move this case towards a trial. His next court date is February 12th.
Our thanks to Juju Chang.